Now, this is not the game I was expecting to make a video on at this point, but Throne of Liberty really caught me by surprise. So much so that I wanted to make a video talking about my early access experience and how the game is better than I, and probably many others, expected it to be. Now, this isn't a comprehensive review or anything like that, but I do feel like some people may be turned off from even trying the game when it releases due to multiple factors we'll get into in a bit, but a quick TLDR for those who just want the opinion. Should you try Throne of Liberty? Yeah, it's free, why not? But to truly answer that question, we need to dive deeper. So, what is Throne of Liberty, you may be asking me? Well, dear viewer, Throne of Liberty is an MMORPG developed by Korean developer NCSoft and published in the West by Amazon Game Studios, or AGS. Now, if you know anything about those studios, you know they've had some mixed reviews in their previous titles, and I expect the same for this one, but in my opinion, Throne of Liberty's got some sauce to it. I think a fair comparison for how this game feels to play is that it's a mix between a bit of New World, World of Warcraft, and Guild Wars 2. It doesn't have a class system, rather it offers specific weapons that have their own abilities and levels tied to them, similarly to how New World did their weapons, but better. It has action combat or tab targeting combat, and feels similar to how Guild Wars plays, and its open world feels similar to WoW in the sense that there's world bosses, public events, open world PvP. PvP is more tied to open world events that I'll touch on in a moment, but the game is considered a more PvP focused game by those who have actually made it to the end game or have played the Korean version. To me, events seem like the big draw for in-game content as well as player engagement, which makes the game really feel like an MMO, which can definitely be something that's lacking in large MMOs, especially ones with zones that don't have much going on in them or don't have in-game rewards. NCSoft has done a good job at giving players a reason to go back to previous zones so far, or at the very least fully exploring a zone with the different collection pickups, side quests, and providing events that give solid rewards that can be based on performance as well. There are a few world bosses that give in-game or near in-game rewards, as well as points on the map that can be captured by guilds that give those guilds a buff for an extended period of time, I think. I don't know, I don't believe they've happened yet in early access, and I'm not in a guild anyway, so it doesn't affect me. What's cool about these events is that they can be in peace mode, PvP mode, or guild mode. For example, there's 3 world bosses that currently exist with coveted drops by in-game players. They're all up at the same time every 2 hours at the moment, and they rotate between 1 being PvP and 2 of them being peace. So 2 of them being in peace mode, which is PvE only, while a third is in PvP, meaning players can fight each other at the same time as the boss. I've not actually done a PvP version of a boss because I only have access to one at my level, and I would get totally rolled by max level players who show up, so I didn't even bother trying when I had the opportunity. That also means it can be a bit of a hindrance to solo players like me who want to complete a side quest tied to killing a world boss, but the next spawn is a PvP or guild version. I'm not going to waste my time there, so I'm just going to wait for the next spawn and hope it's not PvP, which is exactly what happened to me in my experience. The other events I've experienced so far have all been peace versions. These versions of world events feel more like friendly competitions between players as you can collect the most wolf tails or flower seeds or whatever other the objectives that come in the future. Every so often, one of the NPCs that runs the events will have a text box pop up saying who's doing the best at the moment, as well as providing an overall leaderboard at the end of the event. Those who are at the top of the leaderboard at the end do get some extra rewards that are a bit of a higher quality than the normal ones, which is a nice bonus, as well as encouraging active participation for the entire event, which is good design. I am curious how these events will do in a post-launch experience when there's less players funneled into the same area when progressing through the story. Now, this event was really cool and completely unexpected. So I was going to talk to an NPC to start a side quest in a zone at the top of this ruined chapel that's also a bit of a quest hub for one of the chapters in the story. And as I climb up, there's a ton of people standing around and jumping around this guy, way more than I'd seen earlier when I was just exploring the area. And all of a sudden, I just turn to my left and see a giant flying whale covered in gemstones on its back, and I see hundreds of players start flying to land on it. I wasn't even recording at first, but I had to scramble to because it was so cool and unexpected of an experience. And there's some resources that can be mined off of its back, as well as some other things you can collect that I didn't have access to because I'm not a high enough level for. But it flew around in the area for like 15 to 20 minutes and then it flies off to the next zone. It was such a naturally exciting moment for me. No cues, no announcement, nothing like that. I just looked to my left and it was there. It was really cool experience, and I hope there are more genuine surprises like this giant whale gracefully flying through the sky in the future. Throne of Liberty's combat system is, in my opinion, pretty solid so far. Of course, I only had the early to mid-game experience, and by all accounts it keeps improving the further along you get, but so far I have enjoyed my experience with the combat. As stated earlier, this game employs a weapon-based combat system as opposed to class-based, and there's 7 weapons available currently, those being Greatsword, Sword and Shield, Daggers, Longbow, Crossbow, Staff, and Wand, with more to be added in the future. Each weapon has their own abilities that unlock as your character gets higher levels, as well as passive abilities for each weapon that you choose to equip as well. For example, at level 21, there's a passive skill for the longbow that improves longbows and crossbows damage, or the crossbow having a passive skill where your magic, melee, and hit chance go up whenever you attack with your offhand weapon, since the crossbow is a dual-wielding weapon. Each ability can be leveled up individually to increase the stats, and there's a system for skill augmentation similar to Lost Ark's tripod system, where you can completely change how an ability behaves. On top of that, abilities are affected by the weather. Is it raining? Lightning skills have the benefit of bouncing nearby targets or doing more damage. Is it windy? Longbow and crossbow skills have longer range with a tailwind and shorter range with a headwind. The weather also affects the world by making places either easier or harder to access through things like flooding entrances, or tailwinds giving you extra distance when flying to actually reach hard to reach places. On top of all these effects, players at the very top of different leaderboards, whether that's in kills or experience or activity, they get special abilities that can alter things like the weather or the time of day in the game, which I'm pretty sure is mainly a PvP affecting thing than a PvE thing, but it is pretty cool for those who are the best of the best at a specific category in the game, which I most certainly will not be and never will be. The main drawback I have with this combat system, which admittedly is going to be a very personal problem, is that I am a very indecisive or flip-flopping person when it comes to combat in MMOs. I always want to be switching around to different styles, and the way that Throne of Liberty does combat leveling, it kind of feels like it wants you to make a decision and stick with it. You can still experiment and change things in the future through systems like transferring gear and skill upgrade levels, but the resources for these transfers can be a bit limited. And as someone who doesn't fully understand the stats I want to be going for, because I don't want to rely on a guide or anything, it could set me back much more than if I just committed to something and stuck with it the entire time. And now this could be a bit of misguided analysis because I haven't even gotten to the end game yet. That's how I feel so far, and I don't think that's going to change. Of course, this wouldn't be a problem if I could just commit to a weapon combo, but as the footage I've shown here shows, I swapped from longbow and staff combo to a longbow crossbow combo to a crossbow staff combo, which I've enjoyed all of them so far, but generally I've always had more fun in MMOs playing as a melee class, which would require a complete switch up of the resources I've been using and putting it into other weapons so far, thus running a situation I highlighted a moment ago. This obviously would not be a problem for everybody, but it is one for me because of my indecisiveness. Every MMO needs its open world and setting, and all MMOs have quests for those worlds as well as some form of main story to follow. Throne of Liberty's world is visually impressive and decently varied so far, with a solid variety of quests that aren't just kill things or collect things, and paired with the events the zones have, it leads to an enjoyable open world experience. The main quest, on the other hand, it exists, which is about as good as I can put it at the moment. To give credit where it's due, the main quest is almost entirely fully voiced, with good voice acting for the English dub, which can be a bit hit or miss for Korean MMOs. Has a nice progression through each zone, and does have a consistent thread for players to follow. A problem that does exist is that sometimes the characters just stop talking or don't say a line that seems like they're supposed to, or sometimes the line just isn't dubbed in English, which, as a one-off experience so far, was very funny to be caught off guard by. Another problem is that the thread provided is extremely thin and the main story can still be convoluted in spite of it. The bright side is that at the end of each chapter there are these very impressive painted art style cutscenes that give background information to the characters prominently featured in each chapter. So far, playing through chapter feels like going to a new city you've never been to and trying to find a specific restaurant without a map. You kind of have a general idea on where you're going, but you might get confused or lost on the way. But once you get to the restaurant, it's better than you expected. That's what the main experience has felt like to me so far, which is I'm up to chapter 4. There's still quite a few chapters to go, so it may change. It does seem like the main story is more so a driver to get the players from one zone to another, with the threat of the main bad guys to connect everything together so that they can focus on zones and gameplay, which is a fine choice to make, but as someone whose favorite MMO is Final Fantasy XIV, I can't help but want a larger emphasis on the story, but that's okay that it's not there at the moment. This last little section is just things that I think are cool with the game, things I want to try, and things I've heard about, as well as things I'd like to see in the future that have not already been talked about. First, the fact that there's basically no loading screens in Throne of Liberty is extremely impressive. It has a seamless travel from one zone to the next that WoW has, which is nice, but what's more impressive is the teleporting. Teleporting from one city to another or one zone to another has no load screen at all. And the only semblance of a loading screen I've seen so far is teleporting from one of the major cities to a dungeon, and it was there for maybe like 1 second. I have no idea how they managed to do that for an MMO that looks as good as it does and is the size it is, but it is wildly impressive, and it does help with immersion on top of it. As I mentioned before, the game is gorgeous, and I think video streams don't exactly do it justice. Playing it myself for the first time, I was surprised at how good it looked. It is a very pretty game, and for the most part it runs pretty well. I know that there have been some issues in Europe with server stuff during early access, so sorry to you EU people, hopefully they fix it soon. But I don't have any sort of high-end BVPC or anything like that, but outside of heavily populated cities or hubs, or events with hundreds of players in a very centralized location, it does run really well, and most of my settings are mostly on max. The character creator is solid for a 24 MMO, but it's not at the levels of something like Phantasy Star or Black Desert, which are the best of the best when it comes to character creators and MMOs. But it does get the job done at a pretty good degree for those who really want to get into the nitty-gritty of character creation. I do think more hairstyles would be appreciated though. Some stuff that I haven't experienced that I want to try are obviously the in-game activities like dungeons, and if I do end up joining a guild, maybe some PvP stuff like some guild conflicts or castle sieges. I've also heard that there is a Mythic Plus style experience with its own leaderboards and stuff that either will be coming in the near future or is already in the game. I don't know exactly, I've not made it that far yet, but that does seem like that's where the PvE in-game experience will be leading to for now, since there are no raids or anything like that. But as a PvE focused player, I would like to see NCSoft's take on a raid, as would be something I'm much more likely to desire experiencing. Now, a big question some people may have is how pay to win is Throne of Liberty, as Korean MMOs are generally known for their pay to win habits. Well, I don't even have the auction house unlocked, so I can't truly answer that question from personal experience. What I can say, however, is that they significantly tuned down the pay to win elements from their betas and their Korean launch, and people who have played the Korean version have said that the pay to win isn't as bad as other games, since everybody has some sort of weakness no matter what. Basically, you can't just pay to be Omega broken, overpowered, but you can pay to get ahead of the curve of the general player base, so I'm sure that has some effect on the PvP side of the game. But because the PvP side has kind of a rock, paper, scissors effect when it comes to combat, ranged is weak to melee, melee is weak to magic, magic's weak to ranged, apparently it's not that bad. But it is something to be aware of, as is basically any Korean MMO, so just keep that in mind. Overall, I think that Throne of Liberty is a nice addition to the MMO genre that I'm excited to play more of now that its free release is imminent. The future of the game in terms of content already exists because it's almost a year behind the Korean version, but AGS has stated that they want to catch up, so stuff can be headed our way sooner rather than later. But what do you think? Has this game piqued your interest? Are you going to try it out? I'll probably make a follow-up in the future once I've made it to the end game. And for those who are here for my cosplay content, don't worry, I'm going to be making cosplay related videos. I just also want to make these scripted game videos because I like talking about games that I'm enjoying. So expect both kinds of videos to exist on the channel. And who knows, maybe I'll make a Throne of Liberty cosplay in the future and it'll be a tie-in. But since it's the first kind of video like this on my channel, let me know what you think. Or let me know what other kind of videos you'd like to see. Congrats on making it to the end of the video, and thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye now.